Hi everyone, can you hear me? And I love that thumbs up at the back, that's great, thank you. This is a lady that I met some years ago, and she impressed me so much that I decided to agent her book. Sarah Challice cared for her husband for 13 years after he was diagnosed with a brain tumour, and the stress of becoming a full-time home carer ultimately led to her herself becoming ill. Instead of allowing herself to be weighed down by feelings of depression and guilt, Sarah decided to find ways of safeguarding her own health and well-being, so putting her in a far better position to not only transform her own life, but also the life of the husband that she was so lovingly caring for. Her book, Who Cares?, shares her own stories and those of other carers, reaching out to those who find themselves in a similar position with empathy and practical help, so that other home carers everywhere might benefit from much badly needed and too often unavailable advice. Sarah now gives talks on this subject up and down the UK, and her book was a deserved winner of the People's Book Prize. In fact, Sarah's recent talk here at the Hertford Club has led to our own newly formed Hertford Club Carers Group being officially recognised by carers in Hertfordshire, and we are lucky enough to have their representative Nikki Bird here with us today. Who Cares is one of the only books to fully recognise the needs and well-being of the carer, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce its highly esteemed author, Sarah Challice.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. I'm just going to put the microphone on, so give me 2 seconds. So I'm just going to ask you all a question first. Can I have a show of hands? Who here is a carer at the moment? Who's caring for a loved one? Thank you. And keep your hands up. And who here knows of somebody who's a carer? Basically, all of us really, because at the end of the day, 2 in 3 of us will be a carer at some point in our lives. And we'd like to think if we fell ill, somebody be there for us as well. So it really is just part of society. We'd like to think that we are in a caring society, wouldn't we? But the fact is, the best part of 70% of carers fall ill from that stress and burden, particularly those who are caring long term, as I did. And that statistic needs to change. We need to give more support to carers, and that's why I'm here. But did you know that when it comes to our economy, carers save our British economy £162 billion a year, the cost of a second NHS, which is amazing and colossal, but not if you end up paying with your own health, which too many of us do. So I want to share my story with you, and if you're a carer, I just want you to just start to see if you notice if any of this resonates with you. So I want to take you back to Tuesday, the 21st of December, 1999. You may remember that John Lennon quote, "Life happens when you're making other plans." Anyway, picture the scene. I'm on the 26th floor of the NatWest Tower. Huge views overlooking the city. I'm in the design team. I've come from Peterborough, of all places. Anybody heard of Peterborough? You know, thank you, Colin. And this is where my life's really going to start. So I'm in the design team, and there were 4 girls, and we're in the office, and I'm sat, and only 3 days into my job, I hear footsteps behind me. I look up, and there he is. It's Neil. He's 6'4", size and stature of a rugby player, cheeky smile, and he's a print supplier to our design team. He's brought us all in wine for Christmas. "You all right there, Sarah? Got a little something you might like." Man after my own heart. Anyway, every now and again we'd enjoy his company. He'd take us out for lunch, us 4 girls, and we really enjoyed it. Oozed confidence and really cheeky, cracked loads of jokes. Not long after that, he invited me out. We started going out together, having a lovely time. Really popular, got loads of mates, even captain of Hampstead Rugby Club. And he said at that time, within a few weeks, he thought I was the one. Whoa, hold on there, Neil. I've not been in London long. But I do remember the day we were driving over Tower Bridge together in his Merc. I love Tower Bridge, very special place. And as we were driving over, I just looked over at Neil. I said, you know what? I could spend the rest of my life with you. Neil looked back at me, and I could spend the rest of my life with you. When we came off that bridge, well, we were on a journey together. But during that time, he was having these funny pins and needles down one side, even slurring his speech. Drinking again, Neil. And then there was just 1 week, he couldn't get off the sofa, couldn't eat, couldn't drink. It's a bit like flu-like symptoms. I'd come home from work, I rang NHS Direct, and which many of us have done, I should think, if you're a carer, and they asked me a million questions, and then at the end of that, they called an ambulance. Blimey, I was still quite surprised. Got Neil to A&E, and they were doing checks and all sorts of things on him over the night. I went home to have some shut-eye in the early morning, just so that I could get some rest, and the following morning, I got a call. They'd done a brain scan. Blimey, brain scan. Anyway, they asked me to come in, and so I did. And then when I turned in there was Neil sat up on a bed. He looked bright and breezy again. He looked so much better, colour in his cheeks. I wedged myself onto his bed and gave him a big squeeze. And only a few minutes later, there was quite an elderly doctor came into the room. He pulled Neil's curtain around his bed, and he had Neil's files. He told us that Neil had either a brain tumour or it was brain cancer. It was a shock for both of us. Neil hadn't been to the doctors in 14 years. And with that, I held Neil tightly. Don't worry, Neil, I'm here for you. Not realising what that would mean for me as a carer for the next 13 years. Anyway, Neil had a huge operation to remove most of that tumour, and then 6 months of chemo and radiotherapy, and at the end of that, he was given the all clear. Oh, thank God, we can just get on with our lives. So that's what we did for the next year or so. We got on with our lives, work, going on holiday, the usual. And that following Christmas Day, Neil proposed to me. And we look forward to getting married? I don't know. I'm never in any rush. But only a few weeks after he proposed, he was having those side effects. Brought his scan forward, and sadly, his hunch was right. The tumour had returned, but this time, it was inoperable. We came home in silence. I remember standing in April Cottage in the dining room. Neil looked down at me, and he said these words. You don't have to marry me, Sarah. I said, stuff the cancer. We will make the most of what we have, because we were on a journey together. That's what makes it so hard for us as carers. So we brought our wedding forward and saw it as a huge celebration with all our friends and family. But Neil had 5 more years of chemotherapy. Just wondered if somebody can last that long. And then at the end of that, I'd given up my job to care for him full time. And a few years after that, he ended up having a stroke, nearly dying in hospital. I brought him home, and he ended up in a hospital bed in our living room, unable to speak, with a peg feeding tube. My larger-than-life husband had been reduced to not much more than a body in a bed. And it was a tragedy for both of us, because as Neil was slowly losing his life, as a carer, I was losing mine. It's kind of how I felt. And if you saw me at the time, I put on a brave face. And this is kind of how I want to describe it at that time of caring for Neil. Although Neil was the one with the brain tumour, with the condition, with the health problems, I woke up to a brain cancer for 13 years. May not have been in my head, but it certainly affected every area of my life until it made me poorly. And I felt quite lonely. I felt quite isolated. Do you? You're behind closed doors, getting on with it. I mean, what else can you do? And I often noticed that I was being judged by family and friends, which was just a nightmare, and I was awful to myself as well. I'm very kind to myself when I'm dealing with caring for a terminally ill husband. Very, very difficult. It's like a black cloud over you every day. But you know what? Do love a glass of Prosecco of an evening. What do you do to distract yourself? Some nights it's the glass, some nights it was the bottle. If I could get out of an evening, I could drink my body weight in fizz. And if you saw me on Facebook, well, always had a smile on my face and a drink in my hand. Or shall we call it fake book? Anyway, I soldiered on as so many of us do as carers, suppressing my emotions. Are you suppressing yours? And with that, I ended up falling very ill because I refused to look at myself. I was busy focusing on my loved one and how he was. I was ignoring my own health and what I needed at that time. And so that was what's happening for me. I fell poorly. I ended up with a horrendous chest infection. Antibiotics didn't touch it for months. And then I ended up with MRSA infection brought home by Neil. It's a wonder I'm still here. Anyway, I was going back and forth from the hospital like Neil. And then finally my good friend Reagan came to look after Neil that day while I was at the hospital again. Now Reagan is a good friend of mine, best mate. She's same age as me, South African, long auburn hair and a real heart of gold. And when I came home early that evening, this is exactly what she said, so I'm just going to apologise now before I blurt it out. Well, I hope you've got a pat of butter for your bottom, hey? Because I'm going to smack it. I had no idea what you do. Why are you keeping this a secret? I'm not Craigie. You just get on with it. That's what you do. Well, I've only been here a day and I'm worn out and I'm stressed. No wonder you're ill. Haven't you talked to family? You know, Reiki, I have. But for many of us as carers, if you're the one that steps up to the mark within the family, you can guarantee there'll be somebody that will step back and lead you to it. And she said, well, who else can you call? Ghostbusters? No. Actually, I remember calling head nurse at our local hospice when Neil went to the day centre. So that's what I did. I placed that call and I finally asked for help. I rang Julia, and when I rang her, she said, oh, how's Neil? I said, it's not about Neil. It's about me. I said, you know what? I don't get out to see my friends anymore. I feel quite lonely. I feel isolated. I said, I don't get out running anymore. You know, that helps to release that stress and makes you feel better. I said, I've even given up drinking. And I said, you know, that's a tall order for me. And she said, I've been expecting this call, Sarah, which really knocked me out. I was really surprised at her. She'd been seeing that I was not doing very well. So with that, she ended up getting him into a nursing home while I went on a silent retreat of all things. Hands up, anybody heard of a silent retreat? Oh yes, a few nods, thank you. Yes, it is boring, but I needed something quite strong to sort me out. A couple of hot stone massages weren't going to sort this out. So that's what I did. I went on that, and with that silence and that peace, I meant I could get some rest. A lot of us don't really sleep very well when you're a carer. You're having a lot to deal with, worried sick. And picture the scene. I was sat with about 35 others in Gaia House down in Devon, cross-legged. And as I was sat there, meditating for half an hour with them, I suddenly felt this pang of anger. I thought of family who could have been there for us, but they chose to judge from afar. And when I felt this pang of anger, it was like electricity, like a pain in the chest and a vice-like grip around the neck. I had no idea of that mind-body connection. I had to change what I was thinking, all these negative thoughts, otherwise it's going to finish me off. So that's what I did. I thought to myself, when it came to those certain family members, if they came to our front door, great. If they never come to our front door again, great. I emotionally let them go. Not easy, but I needed to do that. And I think with most of us as carers, don't we? Not only was I last on my list of priorities, I wasn't even on the list. It was time to make changes, and that's what I did. So I came home, started to look after Neil, but this time I was caring for myself and making sure I was okay. And about a couple of months later, I was then going to it was like a quiz night at our local charity, and as I wheeled Neil in, and we were ready for this quiz, there was a bald woman in her 60s came running towards me. Hey, Sarah, bet you don't recognise me. It's Joan, but where is her hair? She'd been caring for Jeff for many, many years. He had Parkinson's. He'd passed away, and only 3 days after his funeral, she was diagnosed with cancer. Awful. And then she said, well, what about Tara, caring for Daniel all those years, who we knew as well, as just still a good friend of mine. only 8 weeks after he passed, she was diagnosed with MS. Terrible. And I asked both these ladies, do I think it was that stress and that burden that had made them so ill? And the answer was yes, they did, and I know of others. That is why we need to be there to look after ourselves as well as others. So that's when I started to write Who Cares? How to Care for Yourself Whilst Caring for a Loved One. It's the book I could have done with reading, because, you know, most of us are kind of suffering, and there's tweaks and there's all sorts of ways that you can look after yourself. I found strategies, psychology, and a research as well. So that's what I did, and it's got short, sharp chapters in there. You don't need to create a whole overhaul of your life. Sometimes the smallest of tweaks make the biggest of differences. And I've noticed this big change in carers, which is wonderful. So that's why I'm banging a drum for carers. And also I'm on the Health and Wellbeing Board as well for Richmond, and I'm a carer representative. Always when it comes to the papers, you know, where I'm reading, there are gaps in the papers as well for carers, and it's what about carers, what about carers? There are things changing, but we need more to change. And so there's lots of strategies in here of ways to look after yourself. I know that Nikki's going to come on shortly, but I'm going to say a few things to you. Clarity, how are you feeling as a carer? Mentally, emotionally, and physically. Because thoughts are the language of the brain. What kind of negative thoughts are coming up for you, and are they actually true? And notice how you're feeling. And sometimes things like doing something like journaling is really powerful. A lot of carers do that, and I do as well. So journaling, just write down all your inner thoughts, the angst, frustration, whatever you're going through, to jot those down and then say to yourself, well, what can I do about this? And also get in touch and put the feelers out with all the great connections that are out there. And I'd like to introduce you to Nikki, because it took me years actually to find all the support and help. And there is great stuff happening in our communities. It's about finding it though, that's the trouble, isn't it? So I'm just going to pass you over to Nikki.
I'm going to pass you over and give you this.
Do come and say hi. The books are at £10 at the back of the house, and I'd love to see you and speak to you. And come say hi. Thank you.
I'm a little bit shorter than Sarah, so I hope you can hear me. My name's Nikki Bird, and I'm from Carers in Hertfordshire. We are.
I'll lower the microphone.
Do you want to just lower it for the vertically challenged amongst us?
Say wait for me.
So we're a county-wide charity based in Hertford here, and we provide support for people that are caring, whether it's caring for a partner, a friend, relative, anybody who's elderly, disabled, has a physical or mental illness, or maybe even misuses substances or alcohol. We'd like to give you a voice as a carer, and we would encourage any of you here that are carers to come and speak to me afterwards, and we can register you. Something that Sarah said in her talk there about not having anybody to talk to, and we don't want that to be the case. You can always call somebody, if you are a carer, at Carers in Hertfordshire for support. We run carer support groups. We've got 16 of them county-wide across the county, where you can meet face-to-face and meet with other carers to realise you're not alone. We do have some online groups for people. We have one in the evening, we have a reading group, we have a men's carers group, and a daytime one on a Friday as well. So we're trying to reach as many people as we can to get together with other carers. We have a mentoring project where we match up carers on a one-to-one basis for that support, so you can go out and meet somebody that's maybe been through a similar situation. You can talk to them openly and frankly and get that support that maybe you don't want to speak to and burden family members with, and you can speak to them on a one-to-one basis. We run lots of courses which are free for carers. Anyone registered with us as a carer has access to our carer development and learning platform. They run lots of different courses. Maybe it's something that we can help increase your knowledge about your caring role, or it could be those nice to have things. As Sarah mentioned, journaling. We do things like journaling, mindfulness, meditation, ballet, who knew? But it's really good for posture and balance and trying to prevent falls. So there's something for everybody, whether it be an art class or learning actually about how to deal with personal boundaries, for example. Lots of things that we do. Like I say, please do come and talk to us. There's registration forms that I can give you if you are a carer, and we'd just love to support you. And I'll leave you on this one thought. I wish I had £1 for every time people said, I'm not a carer, I'm just looking after my husband. Well, I'm just looking after my child. I'm a parent with a child maybe with autism or learning disabilities. I'm not a carer, I'm just a mum, I'm just a sister or a husband. You are a carer, and I think that's a stark statistic at the beginning about how much we save the NHS by being carers ourselves. So if you do resonate with anything you've heard today, please do call us and see what support is available for you. Thank you very much.